you can take your belt and shove it up your ass.
And I don't know why I'm having this weird lucid moment with you, Lou. But,
I get them out of everybody, damn it. I get them all the time.
You're building something out there, and
So they actually took half my skull out.
Whoa.
It's going to be Marcus Swift, Roman 5-0, and Dmitry Alexandrov.
Yeah, what? Spooky Lou, another wonderful WrestleRoni for me and for you. We're back. I took a week off. I was itching 2 days in. I said, I got to talk to somebody about some wrestling. You know who came through? Hunter Hagee, back on the show, former Mid-Atlantic referee. How we doing, Hunter?
Hey, Spook, I'm doing great. It's good to see you again. It's been a little while since I was on here. It was a great time last time. I think we all have a good time again.
Glad to have you back,
really
sir.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Now, I apologize for putting your last name out there, but hey, that's what we do, right?
Hey, everybody got to shoot Facebook at this point, so.
There you go. Are we working or are we shooting? You never know around here. You never know.
Exactly. Exactly.
What's going on in Ref Hunter's world? What's going on, my man?
Oh, brother, just living the dream, still doing the wrestling thing, still at Boogie's, still having a great time there, doing the wrestling live from BWC and helping Mike and helping around the camp, doing different things. Since I was last on here, things changed a lot. I moved 2.5 hours away. I've wrestled 10 times more than I've refereed. Refereeing was a really interesting experience, and it's something that I'm very grateful to have done.
Mhm.
And I really feel weird saying this. I wanted to get this out there because I have been asked still. For the foreseeable future, I don't think that I'll ever referee again. My last match that I refereed, 2 of my friends actually got engaged afterwards, and if that's my final match, I am more than happy with that.
Nice.
I got to ref a Hearst match that had Gangrel in it. I refed for Kerry Morton when he was a junior heavyweight champion, Brian Pillman Jr., super kicked by Ace Austin, Ricky Morton, Stro, all kinds of guys. I got to do a lot of really cool stuff, a lot of experience that I wouldn't have got otherwise. But I became a referee unintentionally. Reggie Cassidy, Mr. 123, who I owe a lot to and will be in the big list of people I think here in a minute. Reggie Cassidy got injured at his shoot job, and I was called on short notice while I was still training and asked to referee. Debuted as a referee, and within, I think I was 15 matches in when I went down to school, Morton, and was on their TV program for the first time. And from there, dude, it blew up. I did 123 matches my first year, somewhere around. I never added last year's numbers up. Well, not last year, the year before's numbers up fully, but I know it was somewhere in the 300 range, and then I did 40 last year. And it's kind of it's kind of amazing to think about the fact that in 3 years between refereeing and wrestling, I've been in somewhere in the 600 match range.
Wow.
And then with wrestling live from BWC, I've booked probably another 300 or 400 or more probably matches, and I've been really deeply involved in wrestling these last couple of years, and I'm so grateful for this opportunity, both that has been presented to me through PWL, Boogies, with my training originally, and then now through APW and all the opportunities that I've gotten. I'm grateful that these people have seen something in me that enabled me to be able to go out and live my dream.
I dig it. I like it.
And there are a lot of people that I'd like to thank, Jeff at PWL, Jeff and Vinny and Dave, Aaron, they all gave me my first opportunity in the business. I was with them for 6 or 7 months, and they moved to Beckley, and their training dates and my work schedule at that time, because I was already getting partial time off and working with a manager on my schedule so I could wrestle on Saturdays and stuff. And being able to do the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at that point wasn't a possibility. And I switched over to Boogies, and man, um, Yellow Man, Mike Mars, um, the Statement, the Banks brothers, Koga, and those guys were an incredible crew to learn from. They're all so talented. Being out there with Big Mike, last year I was at Boogie's 51 out of 52 weeks. I chained. Mike starts every single day chaining with the guys. He's in there every weekend trying to improve and trying to improve these guys. And Mike Mars is an incredible guy. He's a good guy and a good worker. The people at AIWF with Rick Diesel and Reggie Cassidy, Ty Tyson, and all them, they have been absolutely fantastic to me. The little bit of stuff, the last while with American Pro Wrestling and Joe Brody, taking the opportunity on me. They're wonderful people. All the other promotions, doing the handful of things I did for Tim and all sorts of people in Tennessee. And I'm very grateful for all those people, man. You guys don't fully understand how much it means to me that I've had all this support and all these people that have believed in me. People like you, Lou, and the fans too. And having the endorsement of Jimmy Valiant and some of these people is monumental, because there's a reason why I was shooting for this interview to be in this span. Tomorrow is an interesting anniversary for me. 5 years ago tomorrow, I was laying in a hospital bed, and I was watching AEW Revolution. It was on February 29th. It was the leap year, and Hangman Page and Kenny Omega wrestled the Bucks in that 5-star North American Tag Title match.
Mm-hmm.
And Hangman's from Aarons Creek, Virginia. If you go to Hangman's Wikipedia, you look at Train by, it says Jimmy Valiant. Got the Hangman and Jimmy Valiant shirt on, the new breast cancer awareness shirts that we're doing this year. I looked at this guy and I was like, man, if he can come from this small town in Virginia and go to Jimmy Valiant's and then go to AIWF and HCWA and all these other places through North Carolina and then into Tennessee and then to Ring of Honor and then to the next level, what stops me from at least dipping my feet into the business that I love? Because I've always been a wrestling fan, and I had been toying with the idea for a while. And when I got sick, it just took everything from me. And man, it was 2020, when I was in the hospital. I started training in 2022, 2 years and 2 months after I got out, and it's been the most amazing journey. I have found family, because I grew up in a very, I don't know, very unusual environment. I never felt like I fit in. This is the first place I've ever felt like I fit in. I found a family. I found love with Jesse. We met at Boogie's wrestling camp, and it's shoot when I state the first time we met, I was talking shit while we were circling, and she kicked me so hard in my stomach, I almost shit my pants. And at that moment, I knew I was in love. I wrote it in my notebook. I've got the note wrote down, and you know, she's an incredible person, great heart. This We'll touch in on her stuff here in a moment. That'll be the final piece of this big opening for me. She has been indispensable in my life, is the greatest love that I've ever had. And it's just a wonderful person, and I'm very thankful for her. One of the biggest things is, I had a very, very rocky relationship with my dad growing up. I didn't really have a father figure in my life. I was raised by my grandparents. I was back and forth into a couple of different family members' homes between my mother and my grandparents. And, I never really had a predominant father figure. And for the last couple of years, Jimmy Valiant, a lot of people a lot of people kind of look at it different ways and look at him weird, and a lot of people say it. Jimmy's really truly been like a father figure to me because he's been there. Man, I'm not lying. I'll never forget the morning. It's like 6 a.m., dude, and my phone's just ringing, just going crazy. And I look over, and I had that caller ID thing at the time where it would pop up like who the number was registered to. And it popped up Angel Valiant. And I was like, man, these scammers are getting good. And I went back to sleep, and dude, I woke up, it's still just going. And man, whoever this is persistent. And the third time I woke up, I was like, man, this ain't a dream, this ain't a scam, this gotta be for real. And I answered, brother, hey, how are you doing? And me and Bug talked for like 30, 40 minutes, man. And I'm not as I'm I spend the vast majority of my time now away from social media and away from my messages and away from my phone and stuff like that because I really now focus on Jesse and work and wrestling, and my personal time is limited as is. I work 7 days a week unless I have a wrestling event that takes me away a day. I'm wrestling 2 to 3 days a week. I'm going nonstop. So I don't really have as much time. I'm very drained when it comes to those things. But me and Boogie used to talk every other day or at least 3 times a week. And every Sunday I see him and he lights up. And, I've got an office at his camp. And it's just an incredible thing to be in with not just from the outside, not just a WWE Hall of Famer, not just an amazing professional wrestler, but a good man. Because Jimmy is a wonderful person. He has one of the best hearts, and it's incredible that Boogie can meet you one time, and if you really like talk to Boog and make an impression on you, he will remember something about you, and it could be years later. And if he sees you at a show and you come up, he'll remember whatever that was and bring it up. Whether it be you talked about a family member or something was going on at the time, he'll ask you about it. He's incredible about remembering the fans and doing the stuff. He's just a wonderful human being, and I'm blessed to be able to be as close to him as I am.
Hell yeah, man. You're super blessed. Jimmy Valiant, of all people, a huge, huge
Yeah,
deal, man. You covered a
yeah,
lot.
no,
You covered a lot there, and there's definitely a lot of things I want to touch on. Uh, right out the gate, you mentioned all the matches. Something I've been dealing with, Hunter, is burnout. Even I haven't even been in the damn business and I'm burnt out. I was burnt out from the podcast last week. So my first question to you, sir, all these dates and you're working and you're constantly wrestling. You got to get burnt out here and there. How you deal with that?
I I don't know, Lou. It's a weird thing. I do get those moments which I'm worn down and I'm tired and I'm not necessarily feeling it, but you and the rest of the wrestling community met me at a very different time in my life. I had kind of started to change as a person, and then really once I got around wrestling and Jimmy Valiant, I became a lot. I'm a lot more of a funny, goofy guy, and when I was younger, I was very having dealt with the issues through my childhood and teenage years that I did. I was a very kind of like angry person,
Okay.
and wrestling really kind of got me away from that, and it's kind of such a such a relief and such a outlet for me that it's almost like I can't really get too burnt out or too upset about anything that I'm doing because man, I'm living my dream. I'm living a better life than I ever expected to be. I found, man, wrestling really is like the greatest thing that I could have ever stumbled into and ever been a part of, and I I want to be a part of it every single day. If I didn't work every day, I would wrestle every day, and it's something I don't turn down opportunities. I wasn't booked Saturday, and I took the booking on like um, what 5 hours notice. I think I was called 1 o'clock. The show was at 6,
True.
and I drove 2 hours down there and wrestled in a tag team match that night.
Oh yeah, man. Good on you. Maybe that's part of the reason I'm turning into pessimistic Lou instead of optimistic Lou. Maybe it's the frustration that I wanted to take a break. Now I can't find my way back in. I mean, God bless Twist for booking me for his no ring show. I got to work that, but I'm beating on the door. They ain't answering, man. They're like, no, Lou, you're fucking crazy, dude. You just stay out there and so, hey, man, good. I'm glad you're enjoying it because I get it. I get it where you're coming from. I found the camaraderie, the people. Oh my God, there's actually people that love wrestling besides me, and we both know some cool people. You found love. Congratulations. Hell yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah, man. So I don't know. Figure out my way back eventually.
I know the Spooksters got it.
Oh yeah, man. Well, I'll tell you what. There's some good things going on in the area because I'll be honest with you, Hunter. I've been watching. I'm always watching the area, and I'm not liking a lot of stuff I'm seeing. American Pro Wrestling's doing all right, and we got a big card coming up. Beckley, West Virginia, Mercer Mall, Matt Riddle, Jeff Paul, PWL. A lot of hype, a lot of build up. What are you seeing leading up to this show next weekend?
Um, yeah, I definitely think this is going to be one of Jeff's biggest challenges. Jeff has wrestled a lot of very talented guys, but Matt Riddle's not. I wouldn't say fully in his prime, but Matt Riddle's very at the top of his game. Matt Riddle's a phenomenally talented wrestler, and I think he's really going to push Jeff to his limits, and Jeff's going to have to dig deep to pull out a win in that match. I don't think that it's impossible. I definitely do think that Jeff can win that match. It's just whether or not he can swim through the deep water that Matt Riddle's going to drag him out into.
Yeah, yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I'm definitely excited to see what kind of crowd they pull. What about American Pro Wrestling last night? I know you was there. What you seeing going on in APW land?
I run some of the backstage stuff. I do their camera production and a little bit of other things back there. Run the soundboard, and I get to watch some of the product firsthand doing that. And it's a really fun program. They have a lot of younger guys who are getting better every time they go out there. They've got some very talented veterans, a mixed locker room of good talent though. Um, Joe's a really good guy. I enjoy working alongside of him, and I see a lot of people get opportunities there that really kind of get to showcase their product at a bigger scale because APW does have a television program and does air up and down the East Coast and airs quite a few places, and I think people undervalue that sometimes
Mm-hmm.
because it's one thing to just go and be on a show in front of 120 people, but if there's not a scout in the crowd, which around here there's not going to be unless there's a reason,
Mm-hmm.
you're not getting high quality footage. What are you really getting out of that other than the in-ring experience? That does help, but if you're not getting something to where you can promote your product outside of that, what are you really gaining from it? And being able to be on a program that airs to eyes outside of this area, into Florida and New York, and I think it airs up in Ohio and Pennsylvania. I forget how many states, but it's several states that it airs out into,
Mm-hmm.
and it's available on Fox Nation. It's available on Rumble. It's good quality footage. It's good matches. Joe puts together some good stories. It's something I think people undervalue the opportunity of.
Yep. I agree. And, I'll be the first to say, YouTube, Rumble, the internet, all that. Television's different, man. You can catch that casual person flipping channels and who's this Baron on here kicking this guy's ass, and different things like that. You're going to catch those casuals here and there. So that's a damn
That
good
was,
point.
that was a big thing that Quackenbush put over because we had Quackenbush coming to Boogie's. I booked him and brought him in. We had him for 3 days, and dude, it was invaluable. Absolutely wonderful training sessions. And one of the things that he emphasized was the channel flippers, because that's a demographic that kind of doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't get caught on as much because, for the most part, on a major television scale, there are a handful of guys that stand out in the way they look, but cookie cutter wrestling, I can't speak today, has become more prominent in that guys are wearing similar colored gear and everybody kind of looks similar builds, and there's not really, in my opinion, an it factor guy that if I was flipping through the channel, unless they were doing one of the most crazy moves, which today every match somebody tries to die, or they really like guys that, in my opinion, would stop me if I was flipping channels, are like Beast Mortos that wrestles up in AEW and in like. WWE, like if I was flipping a channel and saw Gunther chop a guy, I'd stop and want to see him do it again.
Right on.
Stuff like that. I think people overlook that because today we don't really have a household name, and I think that's one of the reasons why wrestling has deviated compared to if you look in the 90s, 4 times more people watched Raw than they do now.
Right.
There were way more viewers, and one of the big things was that star power. You saw 7-Eleven commercials, Stacker 2 commercials, you name it, movies, anything. They would put a WWE guy out there. They'd send Taz or Booker or somebody, and they'd go film their little commercial and they'd air it on TV. And that bred familiarity. If you were seeing them on TV and they were noticeable, then, maybe they would tune in.
Mm-hmm.
Or the talk shows, or, you go into a Walmart and you ask just any random person, whether they've seen wrestling or not, to name a wrestler, your average person is going to say Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, The Rock, Stone Cold, John Cena. They're going to say one of those names. Most of those guys haven't been anything more than a part-time wrestler for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of like Cena, Cena still was wrestling for a while, but the rest of that group hasn't really done anything for a while. They went elsewhere and did other things. And I don't think we really have a star today.
Yeah.
We have some very talented guys, and I'm not taking away from talent or abilities. I'm talking about the publicity side of star power.
Yeah.
Because, locking yourself into the universe, you can only be as big as your universe. But if you go everywhere, then you can be as big as you want.
Yeah, and that's not just on those guys. That's on the promotion or whatever, everything around those guys. It factors in as well. And I think that's what we really need to go for, especially in our area. We need to go for those channel flippers, go for those casuals that maybe didn't like wrestling, never knew about wrestling, used to like wrestling, whatever it may be. We need to bring those folks back into the fold.
Our goal as wrestlers, every time we go out there, that I think gets lost a lot is, like I said before, a lot of today's wrestling focuses on high spots and on the big moves and on the crazy things. And that does instill some moments, some memories, because what we're trying to do is give somebody a moment, because nothing's better than, aren't you that referee that got super kick based Austin? Aren't you the referee that got spray painted by Jeff Paul? People remember moments like that. They may not remember your pretty snap suplex, but they remember he said something stupid to me and it made me laugh.
Right.
I remember that, dude. My first indie show. I'm not gonna name names in this, but there was a talent that was upper level that worked for a company that had come in to work the show, and it was 45 minutes from my house, and I went to it. And to be honest with you, wasn't the greatest experience when I met him. Was kind of rude to us, to be honest with you, and I was very disappointed. I was literally wearing a shirt that had him on it, bro, and he was very off-putting. This is the thing that also I think that younger wrestlers need to take in. I had that experience with him, and it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. At the end of the merge tables was Ron Mathis, and dude, you know Ron.
Mm-hmm.
Ron Mathis is one of the funniest and goofiest and just greatest personalities, and especially when you put him in a merch table. He is a hoot. And dude, when I met Ron and got his autograph that night and talked to him, dude, it made me want to come back and see him again.
Okay.
Out of everybody else that was on the card, Ron was the one that our interaction that night, I was like, dude, I gotta come back and see this guy wrestle again. And it's those interactions sometimes that can make that difference between, hey, I came out, checked out the show, and I enjoyed the show, but I don't know if I'm gonna come back, and I like this guy. I'm gonna come back next time.
Yep. Who's some guys right now you think are doing it right? Who's our modern day? I mean, we do have Ron Mathis, but who's the next Ron Mathis? I guess.
There are a handful of guys that are doing really good with some of that stuff. Lane is a guy that, in terms of his designs and some of the stuff that he does, I enjoy the way that he interacts with people, even when he does his heel stuff. His crowd work is phenomenal, and I think he creates that stuff. I have not, outside of some people who have now gone on to do some pretty big things, I have not met anyone that has such a crazy crowd base, at least in West Virginia. I've seen some of his stuff elsewhere as like Opie, Lil OK. Dude, he's extremely over. The people love him. Z does really good work with interacting with people at the merch tables and in the crowd and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Guys like that, it's little things. Making those memories. They're just things that I think it gets too overlooked by, I want to get this in, I want to do this, I want to do that, or I want to have this 5-star match, and not, I want to give the people something that they want to come back and see again.
Yep.
And that's what we're supposed to be doing. So we're supposed to be giving them a product that they want to tune into every week, that they want to come and buy a ticket for, that they want to, when we go to shows, that they want to drive 30, 40 minutes, an hour, or whatever away and come and see us. We want to give them that kind of product, because that's what they were doing with the territories and stuff, was they were with their storylines and their interaction and the way that they were doing things, because they didn't have merch tables in the 80s, and they didn't have the meet and greets that you do now. And dude, look at the ticket sales they had.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the way they were doing things then, and it was because they were in the ring bringing out so much raw emotion, that the emotional involvement was so great that they were enthralled and they couldn't get away from it. And then outside of the ring, one of the biggest things that I don't see enough companies doing was, if you look at the old Mid Atlantic promos, man, they'd send Boogie or Dusty or Baron von Raschke or whoever. They'd come out and, we're going to be in Richmond at wherever, whenever, and they'd run down who they're wrestling, and then another guy would come out and be like, yeah, we're going to be there, we're going to do this on this date, and everybody would talk about where they were going, instead of just, now, at least at the major level, it's just commentators. You'll hear the commentary team, like, on a prescription drug commercial, when at the end they do the rundown of like side effects, and they say it as fast as they can so you can't hear it. That's what they do with, like, and next week AEW Dynamite's going to be here, and then the next week they're going to be here, and then our pay-per-view's going to be here. And it's like, guys, let people know where you're going. Don't just run through it because you're trying to get the spot out. To show it, promote it.
It's going to make you some money if you do it right. I get it. Definitely do. And I can see their excuse. Well, we've got X, we've got Facebook, we've got all of our socials. Check that there. Well, not everybody's going there. The old folks are watching you on TV. But a good point that I want to touch on, you said emotion. That's a big seller. I've had my emotional moments in wrestling. There's been numerous times I've run the camera and teared up. And I told somebody this past week, I'm turning into Ric Flair. I've cried more in my wrestling time than any in my life. Give me some emotional moments, some of your moments you've been a part of in the business that got pretty emotional.
Last time I was on here, we actually spoke on it. It's still the most emotional thing I've ever been a part of, and that was that Benny Conley and Cyclops match at Beckley in the Mall for Retro. Dude, like 47 minutes. People never left their feet. The build up, the emotional connection that I had with behind the scenes, knowing Cyclops and knowing the man behind the mask, and having been there with him from I refereed Cyclops' first match back when he returned after I forget how many years. I was his first referee. We were at the summer camp and he wrestled Willie Storm.
Mhm.
And then with Benny being my original trainer alongside Aaron West, just the emotional connection there. And dude, like that was an absolutely incredible experience, something that I'm very glad to have been a part of from start to finish. Incredible. It's how their story and their blow off and the way they did everything is how wrestling should be done. The people were invested. The people wanted to see it, and that's what it should be. It shouldn't be what the booker wants to see or what the promoter wants to see. It's what the fans want to see.
There's
And
a lot of that going around, Hunter. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Just wanted to
yeah,
stab it out there.
yeah. Well, it's the fans are what we eat from, and the emotional value. You hear the term heat thrown out a whole lot, and guys today um, really, when they hear the term heat, their thought is choking the guy or raking the eyes, or you're talking and you're doing that, and yeah, that's your physical heat.
Mm-hmm.
But heat isn't physical. Heat's emotional. Heat is building that emotional investment from the fans into that baby face. Because, in the words of Al Snow, absolute phenomenally intelligent man and a great trainer and great wrestler. Um, if you were to go outside in the parking lot after a wrestling show and some dude was standing there with a gas can pouring gas on some random car, you're probably going to pull your phone out, probably going to record it, might call the police. You're not going to get that invested in it because it's not your vehicle.
Right.
But if you walked out the back door and there's some dude with a can of gas standing on top of your car, pouring gasoline on top of it, you're going to get a little fired up and you're going to go chase that guy off and you're going to be emotionally invested.
Yep.
And in a wrestling match, we're trying to make that baby face as a heel, we're trying to make that baby face the emotional property of those fans. You want those fans so invested into that baby face that they want to see him whoop your ass.
Right.
That they want to see him fire up. And as the baby face, it's your job to keep those people enthralled in you and to keep those people behind you. You can't die. You have to fight back. You have to work that crowd. And as the heel, it's so important to control your pacing and to make sure you're getting the point across to the fans and to drag that out. And the most important thing is heat is a game of emotional takeaway. When you were a little kid and your dad or your uncle or your older brother or whoever would take your ball from you when you were playing and hold it up over your head and you'd jump up and down, hey, give me that. And he'd bring it down and take it back away. You'd get mad about it. Well, after he did it 4 or 5 times, you didn't care about that ball anymore and you walked off.
Mm-hmm.
That's wrestling. You can only bring them up and down so many times before that investment doesn't pay off.
Okay.
And learning that balance and learning how to put the psychology in matches together is crucial. And I don't think it gets focused on as much. It really is just hit this spot, hit that spot, hit this spot, hit that spot. Let's do this cool move. Let's do that cool move. And I have nothing against that. I
Yeah.
love Konosuke Takeshita and Orange Cassidy this past week on Dynamite.
Mm-hmm.
I went out of my way to go dig that matchup because, dude, phenomenal. They did every. It is one of them things that I watch them wrestle and I'm like, man, why do I do this? I can't do none of that. That's cool.
Right.
And I no harm in any of that stuff. I support all forms of wrestling, but I think that if we want to draw, and if we want to get more people back, and if we want to get back to the heyday and the glory, that emotional investment. Look at the Cody Rhodes finish the story stuff.
Oh yeah.
Look at the way the people invested into that. Look at all this bloodline stuff. The way they've got people enthralled into it, and they're doing these things where they're getting the fans' attention and they're getting the fans involved, and that's how you keep the people coming back and keep enjoying the product.
Yeah. I was having honestly the same train of thought this week because I've been watching a lot of older ECW, a lot of older UWF, and I'm looking at the crowds, and the crowds are invested, the crowds are there. Even old West Virginia footage I've been watching, they got
Yes.
some pretty decent sized crowds, and I'm like, we're having better matches now. The matches, the match quality, the work rate matches are there. So what's going on? And I was like, there's no story. There's no investment. There's no characters. There's no story to follow along to. I mean, Joe, he has a TV program, so he's putting out storylines, and here and there you got your stories, but on the indies, I mean, they're just throwing some guys out there, and I'm like you, I'm the first to, hey, give me the work rate stuff, give me some Speedball Bailey and whoever or whatever. But at the same time, Speedball can go in there and tell a story if he needs to. So I'm glad you brought that up because I've been thinking about that a lot this week because I'd really like to see, especially West Virginia, start drawing more, start making some money.
So you're gonna understand this entirely, and several people who end up watching this are gonna understand this entirely.
Okay.
We know that there are a lot of different levels of professional wrestling, and especially at the indie level, there are some really good shows, and there are some really, really bad shows.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, dude, I have been to some shows in which the match quality and the guys that were out there was through the roof, and there was next to nobody in the crowd. They barely drew.
Mm-hmm.
And on the opposite end of things, I've been to mud shows with guys that like you watch and shake your head watching work.
Mm-hmm.
100 fans in the crowd screaming, yelling the whole time.
Yeah.
And you want to know why? Because most of those guys are local area guys who have an already pre-existing tie with those fans, or they do phenomenal jobs at these guys communicating to the crowd and meeting the fans and doing the meet and greets and doing the hangouts and the little, sending the baby faces out there and getting the emotional investment of like they do it right while doing it wrong in taking these baby faces that these people love. And I think people get too caught up in who's winning and who's losing and things. Taking a baby face and doing them dirty for months and months and months. There's no better way to get heat and to get people's attention and to take that crowd favorite and to just do the people that they absolutely hate, just do them wrong every time they have a show. When they finally get to that show that they do, he gets that big upset victory and he finally wins, they're going to go crazy because they have been watching that kid that they loved get screwed over every week. And they tell the story. Wrestling may not be the greatest, but they told a story. And that's where it comes down to. And getting that emotional investment, man, and dragging those people in. I've worked for promotions that were good people backstage, were good people in the ring that either aren't around anymore or don't run anymore, that some of them, not all of them, some of them attributed it to their draw. And most of them only ran 3 or 4 shows. And you can't expect in a new town with a new product, with not necessarily minimal effort, but with what, in my opinion, is kind of misdirected effort, because you brought up the social media thing, and the social media thing does work great to a degree. The problem comes down to, like, sometimes I'll go work these shows that are 4 hours from my home area.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I share these flyers, 90% of my fans are 4 and 5 hours away from these shows,
Yep.
and they're not going to make that trek.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not going into the town that it's going to be at and meeting people and making connections, finding their word of mouth, finding their yard sale, putting the flyers up, if you're not doing that stuff, people aren't going to know you're wrestling in their town.
Yep.
You can't rely on the guy from Cincinnati, Ohio to promote Bluefield, West Virginia, and people from Cincinnati drive to Bluefield.
Nah, ain't gonna happen.
It's, and especially, if it's a big guy, that's one thing. Sometimes people will make a little bit of a journey, but your average indie worker who has, even if they have 100 fans, those 100 fans are within an hour radius.
Mm-hmm.
Most fans today don't travel more than an hour,
Right.
and if they're 4 or 5 hours away, their main fan base they can't pull.
Yep.
And if you're not promoting your product where it is, then you can't rely on your workers to bring them in.
Yep, you're exactly right. And I'm the first to advocate for social media. We do it every episode, but I'm the first to advocate for putting up a paper flyer. And let me tell you about
Oh, I'm
these.
always for it.
And man, put the matches on the flyer and let people know it's
Yes.
wrestling. Bro, there's a flyer down at Circle K, and I went down there the other day, and I talked to the guy running at the counter. I said, "What the hell's that?" I knew what it was. He said, "I have no clue what it is. People's been asking all day, and I don't know." I said, "Well, right there's the initials for the promotion." "Oh, that's wrestling?" I was like, "Yeah, bro, I don't know, but yeah, it's wrestling." So, yeah, man, like put some wrestlers on the flyer and put pro wrestling. This guy's gonna face this guy. I don't know, man. It's the simple things that worked in the fucking 1950s that still work today. I promise you.
Yeah, so prior to the first time I went to a PWL show, I had never been to anything outside of let's see, I'd done an NWA show, and I can't remember if I'd done an AEW. I'd done an AEW show at that point because I was at the first AEW event,
Nice.
and it was an incredible experience, really cool night. When Mox and Kenny did the table spot, I was in the top of the walkway, standing right above them. It was
Nice.
crazy.
Okay.
It's a really cool night. Um, but when I went to PWL, my first indie show. It was in Bluefield. I lived in Whitfield. It's about 45 minutes apart. I didn't see a flyer. I didn't see a social media post. What had happened, and it's kind of back to that creating moments and creating memories thing because it applies into this. I went into Walmart one day and I ran into a guy like a month before this show, maybe 2 months before this show, and I was wearing an AEW shirt. And he was like, "Hey, you like wrestling? I like wrestling. We can be friends." You know how that
No,
works.
yeah.
And we added each other on social media. And a couple weeks later, he sends me the PWL flyer that has the names and stuff on it. And I was like, cool, I want to go see these guys. It's right down the road. I didn't even know this was there. And that's one of those things of like, if people have seen your product before or if people are seeing it, word of mouth is incredible too. Word of mouth is, in my opinion, as powerful or more powerful, especially in these smaller towns and social media. Because, dude, I work a show about once a month in a town in the middle of nowhere in Southwest Virginia, about 20 minutes from where I graduated high school. And, dude, there's nothing there. It's war has more than Ivanhoe has.
Okay.
Like, there ain't even like, there's nothing there. It's a drive-through town. And, backwoods as could be, and we run this fire department. And dude, every time we run the fire department, it's a packed house because there's nothing else to do in town on a Saturday night. And the people have talked to each other and said, "Hey, I went to wrestling last weekend and I saw this happen. You should go this time."
Okay. Well,
You know,
okay. I'm gonna contradict you, just so I can be an asshole. Mononga, when I was growing up, bro, at least we had an arcade, we had a restaurant, but the coal mines were still open. The coal mines closed, the economy's gone. We don't have shit. We got a Circle K and a couple dining spots. That's it. We don't got shit. But wrestling was coming for a while. October, I made it my mission. My name's on the show, man. This is Spooky Lou's Tales from whatever the hell they called it. I'm putting that flyer everywhere. I'm walking around the town every day. I'm talking to people. I talk to people I would have never talked to in my life, but I talked to them, gave them a flyer, hope to see you there. I was in a parade. Bro, I'm talking every day for a week, walking around
hell
town
yeah.
with flyers, and the buzz was there. We'd had shows. We had a phenomenal show on the 4th of July. But guess what? October rolled around. 30 people, 35, 40. And that's what this, I thought we could do no wrong. Me and Lane's the talk of indie wrestling right now with this story, at least in my mind. I thought we were. I thought we had a pretty good story going.
Well, you guys did some really fun stuff.
Yeah, nobody showed though. I mean, I took pride in an old lady came and it was her first wrestling show. So because of
Well, that's
me,
awesome.
yeah, an old lady came to a first wrestling show. But man, it broke my heart that people didn't show up. So sometimes it just doesn't work, I guess.
Well, yeah, that's what I was about to say. Is indie wrestling is a very cruel mistress, man.
No.
I've seen people, like put hundreds and hundreds of dollars in promoting and draw 25 fans.
Mm-hmm.
On events where, dude, I worked one time that had Rob Killjoy, Casey Kazana. Who else was on that show? Um, I think Caleb Conley might have been on that one. Um, yeah, there were several like upper level indie names on it, dude. And I mean, great card, top to bottom. Had a guy who'd been on The Walking Dead. I think there was another celebrity meet and greet. 12 fans.
Yeah.
And dude had flyered everywhere. I remember seeing him posting it in word of mouth. It's just, I think it's a it's kind of a two-part thing. I mentioned earlier, I don't think fans are as dedicated as they used to be. I'll tell you, I drove through some like crap weather and some crap conditions to go to shows.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're as dedicated as they used to be. And even though it's smaller scale and not a whole lot of money, I do think that there's a big part of it that plays into the current financial economic state.
Mm-hmm.
I think money's tighter now than it's ever been. And I know myself, money's tight from time to time. And I know that a lot of these families, especially you mentioned the former coal mining towns and
Mm-hmm.
some of these other places, man, you know as well as I do, some of those people are already kind of hard to keep a roof up.
Yeah.
And even though it's a great outlet and a great, it can bring enjoyment through a recreational activity, it still becomes sometimes the matter of do I have the money to make it to the show? And it is a thing that I think plays into a lot of these smaller towns and some of these places where, financial hardship's a big thing. I lived in an area in Southwest Virginia where financially the majority of families really struggled in the smaller areas. I went to school with a lot of kids who had it hard coming up, and now it's harder than it was then.
Yep.
I couldn't imagine that, Lou, you're raising a family, so I know you know what it's like to have to buy those groceries and to have to keep them lights on, and even with just me and Jesse and all of our animals, man, like it's hard times. And I really think that if we can get an economic upswing and we can work on getting that emotional investment, because wrestling went through a really big boom in the last couple of years when AEW hit. Indie wrestling promotions skyrocketed more than ever.
Mm-hmm.
MLW upped their game. NWA tried to up their game. GCW puts on some really good shows. Indie wrestling really got hard at that upper level, and then at our indie level, we're trying to get up there, but those GCW guys and those bigger shows have the IWTV and have the big social media followings and have the ingrained like not quite not quite what I call Ultimate Warrior mass hysteria fans,
Right.
because like Warrior was mass hysteria in my opinion. It's just people were going crazy every time they saw him.
Right.
And it ain't quite that where people are just so engaged fully, which I know a lot of fans like this, so engaged into the product that they're every single show, but they've got in their towns that they go to, they've got established fan bases and they've got stuff and they're set up. And I think people are just looking at that, looking at the end product. They're looking at the house, but they're forgetting all the bricks and the mortar that it takes to build that house.
Yeah.
You don't pop up overnight and people, they fly up, they get close to the sun, and their wings melt, and instead of trying to put them back on, they just plummet. And I hate it because there are a lot of places that I've seen so much talent, so much potential in that, went under or don't run like they used to, and could have been so good. And it wasn't even entirely, there are a lot of factors that go into stuff like that, but
Oh,
it's
for
just
sure.
so hard right now to run a wrestling show.
Yeah.
Even running the training program show that I do, between the belts, and I've, replaced canvases, and I've bought I've bought gear for people to use when they didn't have gear, and just the investments and stuff like that. And that's minor compared to what I know some of these people have put into these wrestling productions just to, barely be able to cover the rent for the building.
Yeah.
Um, and it's unfortunate because wrestling is an art form. We're not in the Louvre, and I was about to say we're not in the Smithsonian, but we are in the Smithsonian. Jerry Lawler and uh, Bill Dundee, not Bill Dundee. What's Dutch Mantel?
Dutch. Okay.
Jerry Lawler and Dutch Mantel are in the Smithsonian for their match they had in front of the orchestra.
Okay.
Um,
Nice.
we are an art form.
Hmm.
We're a sport, but we portray an art. We are a craft, and we are on a big stage. And I don't know. I hope that we can turn our art back into what it used to be.
No.
You rewind 70 years, and the top two highest paid athletes in the world were the heavyweight wrestling champion and the heavyweight boxing champion. Wrestling used to be the top sport in the world, alongside boxing. And then you look at Ernie Ladd and look at Wahoo McDaniel. Wahoo McDaniel, when he left the NFL, was the highest paid NFL player and was making $7,000 a year and was making $50,000 a year as a wrestler.
Okay. Wow. Yeah.
Look at today. Look at an NFL contract and look at a WWE contract. Some of them WWE guys are making decent money, but the average is so skewed. Look at the NBA. Look at the contracts they get,
Mm-hmm.
and then look at what we're making. And we, not taking away from those other sports, but most of those other sports get a whole lot more time off than our guys do.
Yeah.
In WWE, you're on the road 300 days a year. Your family, your life, your livelihood, everything is on the road.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, a good example of that, I don't think people understand, uh, Carry On Cross and Scarlett,
Mm-hmm.
before they did their indie run and then went to the WWE for the first time. When they left Impact, it was a two-part thing. One of them was an incident with Cross and some backstage stuff where they wanted him to gig and they weren't going to have a plastic surgeon there, and that's I get that to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
The other issue was Scarlett's contract. Scarlett at that point, as Carry On Cross's manager, was signed to a $12,000 contract. Dude, that's not even minimum wage.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
that's pennies. Like what $12,000 doesn't pay a year's rent.
Yeah. Where does it come to the point where folks are taking advantage of your love of the business? You know what I mean?
It,
And I
exactly.
get paying dues and I get respect and I get all that, but there's a lot of that going on. There's a lot of, and you mentioned names too. That's another thing I wanted to mention. Bringing in names, I've been told by numerous people, and it makes sense. I'm not gonna argue it. There's no need booking names in the West Virginia area because people aren't going to buy tickets to come see names. Good point. They're not. You're exactly right. A lot of people's not going to know who Suzuki is or whoever it may be. A lot of the average wrestling fans. My argument is, okay, it's not my money, fair, but bring them in for a couple shows, 2, 3, 4 shows. That way you have these established pros putting on top tier matches, top tier shows. Then you got your word of mouth. Now you got people talking. Now you got a buzz. People are going to come back to see your product.
And that comes back to, that financial thing, because I too see both sides, because I have seen names bring more people in. I've also seen names not matter at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I think from the backstage perspective
Mm-hmm.
and from the perspective of it financially, I know a couple of guys that, have been around, and some Hall of Fame level guys, and a lot of them charge different prices. And I know one in particular that it's about an average of $500 to bring them in for a night.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say your tickets are $10 a piece. Well, that means that he's going to have to bring 50 fans in just to cover the cost of paying it.
Yeah.
And is he going to bring you those 50 extra people?
There you go. Yeah. More.
And that's just hoping, that's just 50 extra people to cover him. Is he
Right.
going to bring you people to put some money in your pocket?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I say it's not my money. But and my theory of bringing them in 3 times, now we're talking you're in $1,500 for one guy, So
Yeah.
yeah, dude, it's tricky because I don't think the workers are paid fairly. But at the same time, how are you going to pay the workers if you're not making the money to pay the workers? Like they say, shit rolls
Anybody,
downhill.
if you really. So earlier, I discussed the heat thing and the emotional investment. Um, Al Snow, once again, I listen to his stuff all the time. He's such an incredible worker. Al Snow, he puts meat in seats, and without meat in seats, we don't eat. And if you're not bringing those fans in, you can't expect to make the exuberant amount of money that you want to make, because it's not there.
Yeah.
You gotta step back sometimes, and think about, take into accommodation the ticket prices. Then look at how many people showed up, and then think about what everybody in the locker room's getting paid, the building rent. Depending on where you are, you have to have insurance on your show.
Mm-hmm.
There's a number of factors that can all come together. If it's not your ring and you're having to pay ring rentals, in the state of Virginia, if you're lucky enough to get through the licensing process, it's, $1,000 to $1,500 or more just to get your license to run shows. You
Yeah.
haven't even got to the ring and to the workers and all that yet. That's just to get your
Yeah.
license.
In Pennsylvania, you have to have a doctor on call. I remember when
Yeah,
RSW ran in
Maryland.
Pennsylvania, you had to pay. I think they had to pay him $100 an hour, 3 hour show, $300 to the doctor. We could have brought in a pretty nice name for that.
Yeah, that's, and, I get that stuff to a degree, but, it really hurts us and inhibits us at times. And especially with the doctor, and with some of the hurdles that you have to jump through with, like, the state of Virginia. Um, we can only blame ourselves, because, as well as I do, there were a lot of guys in that period where WCW and ECW folded, and WWE and TNA kind of had that little rivalry. There was that stretch where if you weren't in one of those two companies, it was like the wastelands, dude. Like,
Right.
ICW, CZW, all the tournaments of death and all that stuff. And
Hmm.
I love deathmatch wrestling. I love all forms of wrestling, and all forms of wrestling have a place. But, look at what happened in Kentucky. Kentucky cracked down over those, deathmatch shows, and they told them, they were like, guys, you got to dial it back in a little bit. And they didn't listen, and they were like, all right, well, now we're going to enforce regulations. And at first it was, you can't bleed, you can't do this, you can't do that. We got licenses now. And they shook their hand in their face and bled anyways. Well, then they cracked down on it. At one point in Kentucky, they were legitimately trying to pass it in an athletic commission, to where even to be in the concession stand and to be selling hot dogs, you were going to have a license.
Wow.
And, we have to be careful with what we do. A lot of that too, with some of this stuff with the reduced fan rates, is burnt towns.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times some of these guys went into places and misadvertised, is the way that I'll put it.
Hmm.
Because if you're gonna have, you talk about put the matches on and stuff. If you're gonna have more hardcore stuff, I think there should be kind of like an advisory of like, hey, we're gonna have this type of match and have it outlined kind of. It's gonna be hardcore because what happened a lot of times was these companies would go into these towns, man, and emulate what they were seeing through ECW and through this hardcore stuff, and beat each other half to death. Which once again, as long as your fan base is into it, I have nothing against. But they do it in these towns after they'd hung up flyers, and your average Joe saw this flyer and it just had people's pictures on it, and maybe one of the guys wrestled in the WWF or ECW in the 90s, and you remember him. So, hey, let's take the family. And then you go, and somebody's getting stabbed in the forehead with a light tube in front of little Timmy,
Yeah.
and Timmy's crying because he's only ever seen John Cena,
Uh-huh.
and he doesn't understand what's happening. Then that dude's best friend happens to work for the town council. Wrestling never comes into the town again.
Yep. Took the kids to see Doink the Clown and watched the guy get stabbed in the neck. What's going on here, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah, I get it, man. The deck's stacked against us. I think that's what we established in this episode. It has been, when you talk about a commission in West Virginia, I don't think there's a commission in West Virginia because there's no money in West Virginia. You talk about a double-edged sword, I guarantee you, we start drawing crowds and there's money, some money, real money being made in West Virginia. Bet you anything a commission pops up to get their cut. That's just Spooky Lou's 2 cents.
Well, I'll tell you some lighter sides of the commission. Prior to the last wrestling bear being taken out of commission by primarily PETA and some animal welfare ethics coming into question, Virginia was the last state that licensed him, and they could not because the guy's argument against them was that he repeatedly got him the licenses. There was no reason you could take it away from him. You've given me the application every year. And they were like, well, he's right. We can't just not give him the license. We have to give him a reason. And it's wrote down. I'd have to deep dive. I've got it somewhere. The reason they denied the bear a wrestling license was because it was too hairy and too stupid to be safe inside of a wrestling ring.
Oh no!
And if that doesn't sound like half the guys around here,
Yeah, I immediately thought of myself. I said, "Oh no!"
yeah,
Well,
no,
Hunter,
it's
go ahead. Finish your point. Go ahead.
no, it's a really interesting thing with the way those commissions work and the way the cookie crumbles. But like I said, it's on us, and it's on us to rebuild wrestling and make it into the glorious art form that it once was.
I'm about it. I am definitely about it. Sir, I have kept you well over an hour already. I think I owe you 10 minutes because I give everybody 10 minutes to put out their socials, merch, upcoming matches, anything you wanted to put out there that you haven't yet. I know you wanted to talk about Jesse a little bit. So, yeah, anything you want to put out there before we wrap it up, have at it, sir.
I'll close out with just some simple stuff. Not really that active on social media today, but you can check out Wrestling Live from BWC on YouTube. You can check out American Pro Wrestling across Rumble and all other social medias. Check out PWL stuff. Tune in to your local indie show whenever you get an opportunity. It's stuff like that that means the most to us when you're not just when you can't make the shows and when you watch it online. We notice your comments and stuff. That stuff means the world to us too. It shows you're invested in us. On the Jesse subject, this is one that I know a lot of people wanted to hear some information on, wanted to hear some more stuff on. She's coming along really well. She finally got her port taken out of her the other day, which is going to enable her to get back into more physical activity. As many people have seen, she's been announced as a special guest referee on March 8th for that women's tag team match, which will be her in-ring return. And we're going to have Jimmy Valiant there that night doing a presentation for her. We're going to have a really special night. It's her first time back at a wrestling show in front of the public eye since the benefit in December. So we're looking forward to that March 8th at the Mercer Mall in Bluefield. That's going to be a really special occasion for us. We're gearing her up towards a hopeful return at some point, either the end of the spring or coming into the summer. Because me and her both, we're looking at a lot of opportunities. We had a lot of opportunities lined up that we've had to kind of rearrange. A big one, there's a TNA eval coming up in April that me and her both have our sights set on. And we both plan on trying to attend, and that's going to be the real test to see how ready she is to come back to the ring. And we're doing everything we can to get her back, because that's been my biggest motivation these last few months. Because you know, I covered the girl behind the mask earlier. Wonderful, big heart, kind, caring, love of my life. And I covered that person. But with that mask on, there are very few female talents that I've ever seen step into a ring that can hold a candle to her.
Oh yeah.
And in my personal opinion, it's kind of it sucks that we have yet to get her on a more national picture, because in my opinion she could be on TV at any point in time. Jesse has done this since 2009. She busted her ass for 2 years under one of the hardest trainers BWC ever had before they even let her into a ring, and she earned everything that she ever got. And she went through, dude, go back through and watch CWF Mid Atlantic and go see some of her work there and understand she went through a lot there. And she's really had a very interesting wrestling career, and she's very talented. And these last few months, it's been like a chip motivating me on my shoulder, because of the fact that I'm not the worst wrestler on the planet, but between the two of us, she's 1,000 times better than I am. And I've been wrestling for her for these last few months. Well, now she's coming back, and when she's back, everybody's gonna have to have their head on a swivel and eyes in the back of their head, because Jesse's coming back meaner than she's ever been.
Oh yeah.
She's motivated. She's hungry. She's been dying to get back into the ring. It's all she wants.
Oh, I'm sure. And just following her on social media. I don't know her millionth as
Yeah,
well as you know.
you can find her on Facebook at Sis Sisaki Sisaki. You can find her on, I think her Instagram is the Great Sisaki or Sisaki. Primarily Facebook is where we're going to find most of her updates, and both on in ring stuff, out of ring stuff. She's going to be keeping everybody updated in the coming weeks with our plans for return. I know we're trying to figure out, there's another show March 29th in Stewart, Virginia at the Rotary Club for NICW, that we're trying to figure out putting her involvement in there somehow. I know there's a big angry German guy that she can manage her team with.
Seen
There's a
that?
couple girls that would be interested. Even if she just referees, we can pull that off too. Um, we're just happy to have her returning back, because it's been like something was missing for these last couple months.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, like I was going to say, just watching her post, you could tell she was going through it. She was putting her real feelings out there as she was going through this. But
Yeah,
in the past month, now it's getting lighthearted. Now we're having fun again, which God bless her. I can't even start to imagine. And
no, I'll tell you, the last few months, been a lot of ups and downs, and it's been a very, very difficult journey. But um, she is the strongest woman I know. She is hard headed, and it works right into this. She's just as hard headed towards sickness as she is with anything else. And she was motivated to get back in. One of the big things that motivates her is uh, one of the so like one thing I do want to say that I didn't say earlier. Thank you to everybody that reached out to us through all this stuff. and everybody who has been there. I know I've been very distant to this, but guys, I've just been so drained and so worn out that I just haven't felt like talking to anybody. But I do. The most unusual one to me, the one that really has been the most helpful, dude, Mike Quackenbush has been so helpful to Jesse. She's so motivated to get up to his training school and go up there for a few weeks. I think it's like a 9-week course or something like that. She wants to go up there and do that so bad because Quack has talked to her through all of this. It's been a really big help. Um, there have been several people behind the scenes, but he was the one that really stood out to me as like really helped get her mindset back to the motivation of getting back in the ring.
Good. Okay. Good. Good to hear. Good on Quack. Good. Good on Quack. Well, Hunter, I have kept you for an hour 10, sir, but that's how we come
Hey,
back
that's
on
perfect for
WrestleRoni.
me.
Hey, I appreciate the hell out of you. Um, any final words before I wrap this bad boy up?
Uh, Man, listen, everybody out there, love one another, take care of each other. Take into consideration that, maybe that person's having a bad day. Maybe that person's having an off night. Maybe they've had a hard week. Don't jump to, we live in a world where it is a lot easier to jump to anger than it is to jump to love, care, and compassion. And we should have one another's backs, not stab one another in them. And lift your brothers up. Remember, we are a community, we are a family, we are all together in this, and that is something that I want to instill in everybody, guys. This is about love. This is about care. This is about each other. We are in this, and if we don't have one another, we don't have anybody, guys. Let's take care of one another.
Hell yeah. I appreciate that, sir. Hunter, I will ask you, good sir, to hang on the line for me.
Yes, sir.
To the listeners, this is why we do it, man. Folks knowing what the hell they're talking about, doing it for all the right reasons, living their dreams. And we're just getting started, I assure you of that. So, you heard the man. I'll tell you, go out there and treat each other with kindness and respect, but don't take no shit from no one. Live your dreams. Go support independent wrestling. Stay tuned to the Roni. We got some stuff coming up. We're back. We're back in a big way. You'll see. Spooky Lou loves you. Plenty more coming up. We're out of here.